The system of taxation we have. Presently, we have an income tax, and because spending is so out of control, they're now proposing a consumption tax, a VAT tax, that would be buried inside the prices, and it could be incremental and hiding that.
A VAT tax is an income tax because if I pay for something, if I pay for my materials, I deduct that from what I get, and the difference is taxed. So in other words, each time it goes through another process, it's taxed again for the difference.
Given the complexity of our tax code, and what forms of alternate taxation have you looked at, and can you tell us which ones you favor that would improve a lot of our economic situation?
In my book, Budget Your Goals, Not Your Silver, I went into the income tax, and I found 6 changes that were essential. For instance, if you buy a house now, you can deduct the interest. Under my recommendation, you would deduct the principal. Anytime you paid the principal, you would deduct it. It's an investment. You've made that payment out. Why then do you have to turn around and pay tax on what you paid out? Now, in turn, because it would reduce the cost that you paid for the house, when you sold the house, it would be fully taxed. See what I'm saying? Okay. You've got to tax where the money is. And if I have spent it, it isn't there. So if I buy a house, I've spent it. And I need to deduct that from my return so that I will not have to pay tax on what I've already paid out.
Well, I would think that our complicated tax system would get at least then again a order of magnitude even more complicated than that.
It would be far less, because if you do that, you would destroy the need for capital gains. If I buy it, deduct it currently, and then sell it, I'm deducting it in current funds, and I'm paying tax on it later in current funds. The purpose of capital gains is to recognize the inflation that has occurred between the time you bought it and the time you deducted it, and it has no real relationship to the reality.
If I could do a follow-up, have you looked at the concept called the fair tax?
I think that's what I've heard from it. The fair tax is similar to a sales tax.
It is a consumption tax.
Yeah.
But it looks at the 22% embedded cost in the corporate tax structure that we're paying every time we buy an object. We're paying the corporate tax because corporations don't pay taxes. That's paid every time you buy a product. And on top of that, we're paying an income tax. And the fair tax would be a flat, embedded 23% tax. The $100 item that you buy would be the same $100. But 22% of that would go and pay the fair tax.
In other words, it's a sales tax.
It is a sales tax.
Okay.
But
now think a minute.
But it's not added to, it's included.
Yeah, well, added to or not. Let's look at the person who's buying it. Let's look at the person who's buying it. Mm-hmm. If you have $10,000 a year coming in, she has $20,000 a year coming in, and she has $40,000 coming in. I mean, that's great. You're going to buy food. You're going to pay a huge amount of your income for food. She's going to pay a lesser amount for food. She's going to maybe even get by with a very small amount. What happens is almost all of your income is taxed. Only about only about half of hers is taxed.
Well, the difference is, if you read the bill that was proposed, is that a prebate is given to every person with a Social Security card, a person who is a citizen, to get the percent of their retail sales tax added back into their income that they would have paid otherwise. And so that their first $30,000 is tax-free.
Right now.
So that evens up the poor, and it's probably the most progressive form of taxation that we could have. And it also taxes illegals who are here and not paying taxes and not contributing. It taxes the wealthy. It taxes drug dealers who are not paying taxes. There's a lot of people that would end up paying taxes that are now escaping taxes.
Well, the problem is that Mr. Forbes, who's proposed this,
He has not.
well, let's say
He's a flat tax.
Anyway, he's a man who's wealthy. All of his income is not going to things that are consumed. He's putting money in the stock market. He's putting money into bonds. All of these are now free as far as tax goes. In other words, he's not consuming.
He doesn't buy a new house. He doesn't buy a yacht.
He can buy a new house, but you buy a new house too, and you have to pay much more in percentage to what you got of coming in than what he would have.
You haven't looked at the tax. You haven't really read it and studied it.
Well, I've studied in my economics class, and it's one of those things.
You haven't studied that point.
What does it matter what Steve Forbes keeps doesn't keep? The tax burden that's on the American people now, no matter what they call it, is way too high. Most of it's hidden. Most people don't realize how much they're paying in taxes. The whole idea of the fair tax is to get it up front on the board. So I see, this is the item I buy, this is how much taxes it is. If that pair of $100 blue jeans that are at the Gap, I can't afford the extra $17.
It's not $23.
Extra $23 on
It's
that
still
pair of blue jeans.
$23.
There's still $23 of tax, but it's there and I see it. So I go down to the Goodwill, buy a pair of blue jeans for $5, and it's only, 75 cents tax. I mean, this whole
it would be
the
$1.
rich against the poor against in this country is what's driving the wedge, is what's really destroying this country. At one time, everybody has strived to be like Mr. Forbes and work their way towards it. Now, it's all given to everybody, and those of us who still try to work have to pay for it all. Mr. Forbes still doesn't pay all that. So, to counter something, we don't want to do something because, well, it's not going to hurt Mr. Forbes as much as it will hurt Joe Schmo on the street. Joe Schmo's street, it's gonna be hurting no matter what. But right now, he's not going to get help. The fair tax will help him.